Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Happy days to us all. It's cold up, but it's hot in here. We're going to bring it to you. Appreciate you tuning in and hanging out with us. Got Jess PS on the board and a big show for you today. One of my favorite days. Our friend and yours, James Santelle, former U.S. attorney, host of Amicus, a law review. He's going to join me today. He's coming in hot.
Oh, yeah.
But once he gets here, he's going to stay for both hours. We got a lot to catch up on. It seems like it's been a while since Jim and I hung out.
It has been a while. It's certainly been a while in terms of how fast everything's been moving, and also some things that haven't moved at all.
Yeah, ain't that the truth, Jess? No doubt. So Jim will join us shortly. But before we get going on the politics of the day, don't forget it's time for another Text to Win statewide contest.
Hey.
Yeah, listen to Civic Media on the app. Text a keyword. Now, this goes on several times during the day. 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and your favorite hour with your favorite hosts, 4 p.m.
Yeah.
The Dom Salvia Show. That's me, and that's Jess.
Yeah.
Now, we do this each day for your chance to win from our grown-up gift list. Our grown-up gift list.
Not adult gift list.
It's amazing how just like the same connotation, same word, grown up, adult.
There's a difference between a butt dial and a booty call.
Yeah. Is there? Is there? Yeah, sobriety.
Well.
It's called sobriety. The grown-up gift list. Each of these hours, again, 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m., we're giving away either $100 in cash or an overnight stay to Chula Vista Resort in the Dells. Each hourly entry qualifies you for our grand prizes, from espresso machines to robot vacuums. We've got 8 grand prizes from a grown-up gift list. So, Dom, how does this work? How do I win the espresso? I say espresso because I want it fast. The espresso machine. Well, easy. The grown-up gift list text to win contest. Today's word is, this is an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
Santa.
Oh,
It's Santa. I know him. Santa. Today's word is Santa. So download the Civic Media app. It's a super cool app. Find our station, WAUK, where we're coming from right now, and use the text button at the bottom of the screen to send the keyword the keyword Santa. Mm-hmm. The keyword is Santa.
The keyword Santa.
Text Santa for your chance to win this statewide contest.
Text Santa, get a prize.
Get a prize. Today is what? Cash?
It's cash.
Cash is king.
Money.
Green cash money. Santa. Text Santa, and you will be eligible to win the prize. This goes on all hours, so play along with us. We'll remind you here and there of our contest, and good luck to you all. I can see all you folks jumping in right now, man. That's amazing. I love the response. Thank you for tuning in and playing with us. So, if we can get to some of the politics, Jim, get yourself settled, and welcome, man. Good to see you, dude.
I am so pleased to be with you and Jess today. I cannot tell you. Delighted to be here once again.
It feels like it's been a while.
It feels that way.
Like several weeks.
It feels that way. It has, but a few things have happened in America and the state of Wisconsin, so lots of things to talk about. That's what that means.
And I'm glad you're here once again, James Santelle, former U.S. attorney and host of Amicus, a law review right here on the Civic Media Radio Network on Saturdays, 9 to 11 a.m. It is a great listen, and that's why I'd love to get you on here, man, because it makes this show a little bit better.
I can add a small amount, but never can reach the level of precision that happens every day and from every show on Civic Media.
You are just too kind. Just too kind. That's why he keeps coming back. A lot to get to, of course. We're going to talk about Christopher Wray. I want to start there. Yes. We're going to talk about the fraudulent electors and the attorneys that were, apparently trying to steer those fraudulent electors fraudulently, if that makes sense.
Turns out turning the fake electors into victims. Who knew?
If you have two acts of fraud, does that make it not fraud?
God, apparently so.
I'm not clear how that works. So we're going to get there as well. FBI report came out today regarding who was or was not involved in the J6. We're going to go there as well. This Alexander Smirnov, this guy who told Congress that Biden took $5 million.
Oops.
Pled guilty today to lying and all that. So we're going to go there as well. And, of course, Juan Merchan's going to make some decisions. He has some options to choose from. I could see you screwing. I know you're not happy about that, Jim, so we're going to get there as well. So a lot to talk about, and you can join us as well. Want to hear your feedback, 855-752-4842. Let's start with your neck of the woods here, Jim. The FBI, Christopher Wray.
Yes, absolutely.
Christopher Wray has announced he is stepping down at the end of the Biden administration.
Before the conclusion of his 10-year term, right? 2 years short of that.
And why do we have 10-year terms,
We
Jim?
have 10-year terms because we want these folks to be apolitical. Imagine that in America, right? We want them to be appointed, admittedly by a president, and take these positions in a way that they do not feel that they are at the call at will of the person who happens to be in the White House. We want them to do things based upon the law and the facts. And a 10-year term, which is a long period of time, granted, it is a long period of time, but supposedly insulates you a bit more from the vagaries, the day-to-day craziness that often happens up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. You want this person to be, if not completely apart from that, at least separate enough from it that people have some sense of confidence in what that person is doing. Christopher Wray has been a good director, and I think most people looking at this dispassionately would say just that. He's done a lot of very good things for America. Domestic terrorism, he identifies that as one of our principal focuses. He's done a lot of things, obviously, under the radar, which we don't know about, to ensure that we're safe and secure. Lots of things in white-collar areas, violent crime, all kinds of things. Done some things as well to ensure the future stability of the agents themselves. He's visited every single office, including the Wisconsin field office here during this term, talks to them candidly. He has these open for them, not for you and me, but for the agents to talk about things that make their lives better, to keep them safe and secure economically, some sense of professional status. He's done a lot of good things internal to the FBI. He has plainly been under an awful lot of examination on both sides of the political aisle. This has been a good public servant.
If you irritate both sides, does that mean you're doing your
You're
job?
probably doing something right. It's like the old rule about if you leave from a settlement a little bit, everybody's a little bit unhappy, probably it's a good result. The same kind of thing here. You're not going to, law enforcement is a tough thing. You're going to make some decisions that people are not going to agree with you on. Christopher Wray has fallen in that category. Doesn't qualify you to get fired. But he is saying that he is going to depart before Donald Trump comes into office. We know about the appointment, or the presumed appointment, of Kash Patel, who has said he's going to bring the FBI to its knees, to heal,
yes.
right? Talked about shutting down the FBI one day and opening it the next day as a monument to the deep, dark administrative state. That's not a good sign. And so that's where we are today in America. But Christopher Wray, when he departs, I think you will see a lot of good people on all sides saying this has been a good tenure, not without its controversy. And yes, indeed, he also acknowledges along the way when mistakes are made, and he says, you know what, we got to do better. That's what you want in a public servant, including the report, we'll talk about it, as you just indicated, coming out of January 6th, things that should have been done better in anticipation of January 6th. He acknowledges those things and says, yeah, we can do better. We're human beings. We're not perfect. That's the kind of person who should be in those positions, not someone who's so arrogant as to say, I'm always right, and don't you dare think otherwise.
James Santelle. I'm always right. Don't you dare think otherwise. When you say apolitical, the point for 10-year terms is to keep them apolitical. Right. What you mean is apolitical, not a space political.
Right, exactly.
Kash Patel's going to come in as a space political. That's exactly what they were trying to avoid with these 10-year terms.
Right. You just like the Attorney General that you and I have talked about it so often. You don't want an FBI agent who is going to pick up the phone from the West Wing and the Oval Office being told by someone, whether it's the president or the chief of staff there or somebody, these are the people we want investigated. I've just come back from fill in the blank.
Right, I got a list.
And here are the people you want. You do not want an FBI director who is going to, yes, you take the phone call. You also say, I will confer with my immediate boss, who is the Attorney General, by the way, and we'll determine whether or not there's a basis upon which to open an investigation, Mr. President, or White House generally. We're not going to simply do this because you think we're supposed to be loyal to you. Remember the Jim Comey experience? Jim Comey goes over to the White House and he tells us that Donald Trump asked him for his loyalty. And Jim Comey is fired not too long after that because he did not kiss the ring. You don't want that to happen. That's when really bad things happen in any republic, including ours.
So with the now Matt Gaetz out of the picture
right.
and potentially former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi,
right,
going to be and presumably, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, she is an election denier. I don't know how any election deniers can be in these roles, but that's what's going to happen. So she could potentially be Kash Patel's boss, right?
And she is.
And
she
so
will be,
if the call comes into Kash and they says, "Hey, Kash, I got an assignment for you. Go track down X, Y, and Z journalist or a political opponent or
my rivals, people I don't like," right?
My driver or someone I do like, whatever
somebody
the case
I heard on
may
the
be.
radio who said some nasty things about me on from 4 to 6.
Go dig that up. Go do this. Yes, sir. Take the call. Do that. I'm going to confer with my supervisor. That's going to be Pam Bondi.
Pam Bondi.
How's that going to work out?
Right. And so there's the concern as well, right? That gives you maybe a little bit of cover if you want, but only a little bit because once again, my sense is these lines are going to be somewhat blurred between these folks who are in subservient boss positions. Pam Bondi, of course, has a long-standing. She represented, like many other people in the Department of Justice, including the incoming Deputy Attorney General, she has been the incoming president's lawyer. And she has been in an attorney-client relationship with him during the course of the impeachment proceedings. She plainly has been a surrogate for him in the last campaign. Nothing wrong with that.
She cashed, when she was running for office, she cashed a $15,000 or $25,000 check from the Trump charity.
Right. At the same time that she and other attorneys general around the country were looking at whether or not to sue Trump University for its fraud. Most of the rest of them did that. She chose not to. And she'll be asked about that in the course of the examination by the Senate Judiciary Committee. She should be. She should be. She's got some explaining to do, and she can deny that. But there's also you can get some documents. What kinds of things were written at the time to decline that case that will show whether she was, in fact, doing that for political purposes.
Well, I'll tell you what was written at the time. It was Trump's signature on a check from his charity to her campaign that he got popped for because that's illegal. He got a 10 or 20% fine for that. And Bondi, she got to keep the money. But no Trump University settlement for the citizens of the great state of Florida.
Absolutely.
But, she got to cash it out. Folks, that is James Santelle. He's a former U.S. attorney. He's also a host of Amicus, a law review. He's going to stick around with us today. It's our version of Dom and Friends. Come back with us, 855-752-4842. The word of the day, Santa. I know him.
the police department. Prosecuting attorneys are MC Ren, Ice Cube, and Easy motherfucking E. Order. Ice Cube, take the motherfucking stand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help your black ass? Damn right. But won't you tell everybody what the you gotta say?
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. Word of the day is Santa. Text it, win some prizes, win $100 today, and a chance to win the grand prizes, espresso machines, robot vacuums, and more. 855-752-4842. James Santelle with me today in today's edition of Dom and Friends. Got Just PS on the board as well. We're talking about Christopher Wray stepping down at the end of the Biden administration's term to what? Hand over the reins. Jim,
Right.
We have some sound. Let's play some sound, and then I'll grieve a little bit. If you would please, just let's play the first one from Christopher Wray. I believe this is from today.
After weeks of careful thought, I've decided the right thing for the Bureau is for me to serve until the end of the current administration in January and then step down.
Do you think that's the right thing for the Bureau, Jim?
I've said before in other contexts, including this decision, which I think is wrong, by our present Attorney General to terminate these federal cases, there is something
Against Trump.
Against Trump,
Yeah.
right? There's something to be said for continuing to the conclusion of your term and staying on January 20th and 25th and waiting for the confirmation of your successor. If indeed the president nominates, and he will, Kash Patel, and he is then subject to review by the Senate, when that day comes, maybe it's going to come in late January, maybe February, your replacement is standing at the door. He's got his boxes. He's going to hang his diplomas in your office. It's time for you to leave. There's something to be said for staying. And there's both the visual aspect of this, which is compelling. The current president, at that point it will be Donald Trump, basically is firing you. There's something to be said for that image that the chief executive has said,
me, man.
Fire me, man.
Fire
Right,
me.
go
I
ahead.
get to collect some unemployment
Exactly.
then.
Right. For that image of what you're doing with respect to the rule of law, there's also something, as I hinted before, about the continuity issue. Now there'll be a deputy who will stand in, and that person is not at the top level, but there'll be an acting director all the
place
time.
won't fold without
It will
him
not
there,
fold.
right.
The lights will stay on. The work will continue throughout the country. But there's something, again, just for the purposes of the integrity I mentioned before, the agents around the country, including right here in Wisconsin, the field offices around the country, to say that, you know what, I'm going to ensure that whatever happens come January 20th and the days that follow, including the confirmation, maybe even Attorney General right across the street on Pennsylvania Avenue, I will be here to provide not a buffer. I don't want to anticipate so much badness that you need a buffer, but nonetheless some continuity there. There's something to be said. On the other hand, I appreciate, as I do, Joe Biden's decision to pardon his son. There's something you go home at night and you say, you know what, I've served my country and I've done a good job. And I have decided that it's appropriate for me to, and I think that's what we're hearing today or yesterday when he comments, as he does, you hear in his tone as well, it is time for me to go. And I would prefer maybe not to be fired by a president. I will ensure something of an appropriate transition here, although that could happen also even on February 1 or March 1.
Yeah.
All kinds of considerations there.
And I totally get that. And when you put in the time and all those things, but the factor for me is this is Donald Trump. This is the guy that appointed you. Why wouldn't you just have let? I mean, I get it. Maybe he's getting the back door. I mean, he's a Republican, right? I mean, he's a conservative. I mean, he was put in there by Trump to begin with. He was confirmed by the Senate. I mean, this is so. But all in all, you consider this a generally a good tenure.
I do. And again, it's not, you can identify all kinds of things along the way, including things related to the Russia investigation, all things before even that became the Mueller report, things that the Inspector General has looked at and said you can do better. I know we're going to talk about it, the January 6th event, those kinds of things. You're not going to escape criticism because you're doing things at such a high level,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, everyone, you can't be worried about criticism. You know, you got to do the right thing with the facts that are in front of you and the cases you got and where the evidence leads. You do the right thing,
right? And you're dealing with witnesses who change stories. You're dealing with sometimes changing law. Look at the United States Supreme Court, who changed the Constitution about 5 months ago, right? We're doing all kinds of things, and you're doing this in the midst of again, admittedly, it should be a non-political position. But you're sitting right there on Pennsylvania Avenue between the White House and the Supreme Court and the Congress itself. It is a tough thing to do. You're being called up for oversight capacity of House committees and the Senate committees, asking you to respond to the latest outrage of the day,
your decisions,
right? And expressing outrage to you that you would continue to serve in this capacity, and why don't you resign right now in shame? It is a tough job, and so not without criticism, some of it legitimate, an awful lot of it not. He has been a good public servant, and I think history will treat him well.
We got a couple more cuts from Ray from yesterday. Loving the job and the people cut too, please, Jess.
Now, it should go without saying, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways. This is not easy for me. I love this place. I love our mission, and I love our people. But my focus is, and always has been, on us and on doing what's right for the FBI. Because when you look at where the threats are headed, it is clear that the importance of our work protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution will not change.
Well, we'll see about that.
That may be aspirational. That may be aspirational with an incoming Attorney General and Director. We hope that that's the case and that the things that they have said before are not predictors of what they will actually do. There may be some reality checks for them, too, frankly, with Pam Bondi and with Kash Patel when he takes his office there, right, on that very weird 1970s building right there on 9th and Constitution. It may not be quite as easy as he thinks. And the management of the FBI, the management of the Department of Justice by Pam Bondi is not an easy thing, even apart from all the issues that are confronting America right now.
45 seconds left in this segment, Jim. Do you think that Bondi and Patel will actually be confirmed or recess appointments? What's your thought there?
I do. I think probably both of them will be. I think it'll be very close. The Democrats will not vote for either one of them. You've got just enough people in the Senate right now to vote favorably. Both of them will get through, I suspect, but after some very interesting Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. And I look forward to hearing those and for the answers to these questions, what you've said before and what your plans are for the future of the people's representative there on Constitution Avenue.
I'm going to do whatever Donald Trump tells me. Folks, this is the Dom Salvia Show. James Santelle, Jess PS, and you. 855-752-4842. Don't forget, word of the day for today's statewide contest. Santa. S-A-N-T-A. Spell it right. Santa.
30 seconds.
Show 855-752-4842, 855-75 Civic. It's our grown-up gift list text to win contest. So go download the Civic Media app, find our station, use the text button at the bottom of the screen and send the keyword Santa for your chance to win in this statewide contest. It's going to go on through the rest of this hour up until 5 o'clock. So make sure you do it. Text Santa. Got James Santelle, former U.S. attorney, host of Amicus, a law review right here on the Civic Media Radio Network, Saturdays from 9 to 11 a.m. Wrapping up our discussion of Christopher Wray and the FBI, but we're not leaving the FBI quite yet. Jim, the reporting out today, as I see it at the Hill, the DOJ reporting that no undercover FBI agents were present for January 6th, countering conspiracy theories. Wait, what?
Huh?
Quote, we have found no evidence in the materials we reviewed or the testimony we received showing or suggesting that the FBI had undercover employees in the various protest crowd or at the Capitol on January 6th. The Inspector General concluded in an 88-page report reviewing the Bureau's response. Now,
so we've got that.
We got that. Now this is the rest of it, though. This is what gets me. The report did find that some of the FBI's confidential human sources, referred to as CHSs, confidential human sources, they were present in the crowds, including 3 who were tasked with monitoring domestic terrorism subjects. Quote, none of these FBI CHSs were authorized to enter the Capitol or a restricted area or to otherwise break the law on January 6th, nor was any CHS directed by the FBI to encourage others to commit illegal acts on January 6th. Now, beyond the 3 sources who coordinated, Jim, with the Bureau, the Inspector General found that 23 other confidential human sources came to D.C. in connection with the rally, of which 4 entered the Capitol and another 13 entered the restricted security perimeter set up around the building. Quote, none of the CHSs who entered the Capitol or a restricted area has been prosecuted to date, the report concludes. Now, yes, I'm glad that we had some people monitoring what was going on. That seems very logical. If you bring thousands and thousands of people to the Capitol to go and ransack. Of course, it wasn't ransacked yet, but it got there, right? Mm-hmm. So that I expect that. But do you make a distinction, Jim, or a big difference between confidential human sources or actual guys who are on the payroll? I'm sorry, he's a 1099. He's not a W-2.
Right.
I mean, what?
It is the kind of thing that, again, the American population will not get into this story the way that we're talking about it right now, right? And you know that right now the other side of the media is already saying, see, the FBI had people, they were going inside and they weren't prosecuted. The headline will not make that distinction. There is a bit of a distinction between the two of them, and that is because you do have employees who are, again, subject to very strict rules and regulations. You also have these confidential sources who are, again, they're not on the payroll. That may be a distinction that may not make a whole lot of difference.
But doesn't mean they're not getting paid.
Right, exactly, right? Precisely, right?
Okay, all right.
Precisely, right? And they're getting paid also for some information that hopefully would have been helpful for the FBI. We'll talk more about its information base in just a minute or so. But helpful to the FBI in understanding what's going on, helpful to the FBI in knowing what is coming. And so that's a valuable thing. In the end, again, the distinction may be less significant for mom and pop top out there in America. I think the important thing, there's this notion that they have not been charged. Well, there are many people, frankly, who have entered the Capitol, entered security grounds that were not charged. Basically, the U.S. Attorney's Office, they're prosecuting people engaged in violence, did some things to destroy the trappings of the Capitol building, discretionary judgments made all the time. And my strong guess is, although we will not see this probably for years, is a lot of those CHSs were probably also providing information to the FBI in real time. Here's where I am. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm seeing right now. And as this thing got completely out of control, may have had some positive benefit on the response, although, again, it was catastrophic overall. And so it's a mixed bag, undeniably a mixed bag. The big issue is that you did not have a conspiracy. The big conspiracy issue, of course, is, see, the FBI caused this. They had people on the ground who prompted all these legitimate, again, mom and pops from around America. They prompted to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. That's what the Inspector General found did not happen. That's not what those folks were doing on that day. They're providing information.
They weren't enticed into this activity by FBI and employees to attack the Capitol.
Right. These were not the instigators. These were not members of the Proud Boys, the 3%ers.
Were they Antifa?
Right. Yeah. And there's the counter headline. They were not in that category of people who caused this in the first place, which is some of what those conspiracies say. This would not have happened but for the FBI. Not the case. And again, the Inspector General, it's inside the Department of Justice, admittedly, but it's a quasi-independent agency that reviews the operations of the department. This is kind of the watchdog. Every single cabinet office has this kind of thing. This is Michael Horowitz.
Who can fire the Inspector General in the FBI?
The answer is that the Attorney General can, the President can, but there's usually
can the FBI director?
No.
Okay.
No. That would be, again, I'm thinking of the organizational chart here. The FBI director, the Inspector General, does not respond to the FBI director. So the answer is no. But again, the subject, if you are engaged in wildly crazy investigations out there coming to conclusions that are completely unsupported, then you've got a problem there. But for the most part, again, like an FBI director, you want somebody there who's reasonably, not completely, but reasonably insulated from that kind of political retribution, if you will, if you do something the president doesn't like.
James Santelle, former U.S. Attorney, joining me, Dom, on the Dom Salvia Show. Just PS on the board, 855-752-4842. Inspector General report coming out on the FBI's actions during the January 6th Love Fest?
It was a tourist event, apparently, according to some members of the Congress.
The Hill reporting, Jim, but the report found the Bureau fell short in contacting its offices across the country to see what their confidential sources were saying about the planned rally. Quote, while the FBI undertook significant efforts to identify domestic terrorism subjects who planned to travel to the Capital Region on January 6th, we also determined that the FBI did not take a step that could have helped the FBI and its law enforcement partners with their preparations in advance of January 6th specifically. The FBI did not canvass its field offices in advance of January 6, 2021 to identify any intelligence, including confidential human sources reporting about potential threats to the January 6th electoral certification, the report found. In the statement responding to the report, the FBI defended its preparations. Quote, this is the FBI Inspector General. Right. That was their position. Here's what the FBI said. Although the FBI continues to disagree with certain of the factual assertions in the report regarding the manner of specific steps and the scope of the canvass undertaken by the FBI in advance of January 6th, a time period during which the report recognizes as including multiple field offices providing information in response to direction from Washington field office and FBI headquarters, the FBI nonetheless accepts the OIG's recommendation regarding potential process improvements for future events. I mean, come on. Okay, so they reached out to a couple, but not enough? I mean, is that what I'm hearing?
Mistake with capital M, capital I-S-T-A-K-E, right? You've got the deputy director, who, again, is underneath Christopher Wray. As I said before, what he says is, yes, it probably is understating the error here, but he says a basic step was missed. No kidding, right? And again, something like this, again, I have to tell you, I was not sufficiently aware of the fact that this, I knew there was going to be a rally there on that day. There's some reporting. I didn't realize how organized this was in terms of social media out there, but that's what the FBI is supposed to do. And how do you get that information from Wyoming and California and Wisconsin and Florida and Georgia and every other place? You reach out to your field offices. There's a special agent in charge of every one of those field offices out there, and you say, what are you hearing in Minneapolis, in Phoenix, in St. Louis, in St. Petersburg? Tell us what you're hearing right now, right?
Jim, can't you just look at the crowd, man? I mean, they come will be wild. I mean, the Donald Trump tweeted it out, right? I mean, the internet activity was buzzing. I mean, everyone was coming. He knew there was a bunch of people showing up. They had magnometers or machines that Trump was saying, let the people in, let them come in, right? They prepped enough for that. They pulled permits, right, for the rallies. I mean, of course they knew they were coming.
Absolutely. And so that's presumed that may or may not be a part of exactly what the FBI is pushing back on. This more fundamental mistake is, okay, who are the people who are going to be showing up here? We're accepting that invitation. What do you know about what's coming in from Colorado? What is your group out there? What from Wisconsin? Have you seen some chatter on the deep web, on the overt web here that tells you who these people are and what they're all about? Are they talking about violence? Are they misled? Are they what do they look like? And that's the kind of intelligence that can also help you design what the nature of your response is, and really give you a sense of how dramatically bad or not so bad this is going to be, regardless of what that should have shown, what would have shown. FBI, again, as I said before, acknowledging we did this inadequately. We should have reached out and learn more about the people who are there on the ellipse and then invited by the president down the street to attack the Capitol. We should have done better.
Should have done better. It blows my mind, Jim. And it's so outrageous. It's hard for me not to think that they were just sitting on their hands, like they had instruction not to, or somebody did. How do you not send the cavalry, Jim, the FBI, the whoever, someone get a gun, the Capitol's getting attacked? Where was the cavalry, Jim, from the FBI or anybody else?
Absolutely. And so this is the kind of thing, again, you look to Congress. This is the kind of thing that a congressional committee, an oversight committee, getting this report, again, we know that time is short. It's 38 days, right? But in a properly divided government, you would have oversight committees in the House and the Senate who would grab this report and say, you know what? In 3 weeks, we're having an oversight hearing, and we're calling in these people who are identified in this report. We're calling in Christopher Wray for as long as he's there, the deputy director, the person in charge of this operation, and we're going to read the riot act to them, but also question them about why is it that you did not do this, and ask for some responses. And it may be interesting to find out, again, the Inspector General tells us this was not done. The real question is, why not? Where was this dropped, right? Yeah. And that's something, that's the real story here. Was this, again, now I'm going to be engaged in some of the conspiratorial stuff. Were there some instructions from internally, externally? We don't know that.
Well, there were instructions specifically from the Pentagon, I think, about the National Guard and how they were supposed to engage with the Trump supporters.
Exactly. And standing down from that, we know all about that.
So we know what happened at least on the National Guard, at least in that regard. Christopher Miller, I believe his name was.
Right. And so we've got that. The question should be asked in the wake of this, and a government that would follow up on this question when a Congress, again, presumably is going to be Republicans in both houses, are they going to have that oversight? They're going to seize on this report under a Donald Trump administration that may in fact reveal something about the bad things that went on in the last weeks of that administration? No, the answer is not. And so we have to wait now for other investigative journalists to pursue this further, to ask those questions. That's the only other aspect out there that it reveals more about this. It is a very frustrating situation.
Sorry, folks, our bad. We should have done better. Next. I mean, if there's not, I don't know. And we can do
accountability.
Committees. Yeah, right. What does that look like here?
Right.
And it's not just on again, it blows my mind that you would see it. If it was Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They never would have got foot. That's my humble personal opinion in what I believe is a very problematic racial issue we got in this country. Right. I mean, when Black Lives Matter went there, my understanding they put Trump down in the bunker, man. Right. And it got out, and he was not happy about that.
Right. And here's the other piece that you just implicitly suggested. you would anticipate, again, very soon, that the FBI internally would also do more to come out in the wake of this report and say, here's what we have done to here, frankly, are the people who are responsible. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again.
What are you doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? At least the part that's in your purview. What are you doing? What actions are you taking to correct what happened? And if it's not addressed, how do we know that's not going to happen again?
And if Christopher Wray does it, will Kash Patel do it in 40 days from now?
855-752-4842. More conversation regarding the J6. We got the fraudulent electors here in the state of Wisconsin. I want to talk to Jim about that as well. Come back with us.
Ten.
Back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. James Santelle, former U.S. attorney, friend of ours, host of Amicus Law Review on Saturdays right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Joining me today, Just PS on the board, you on the phones and the texters, 855-75-CIVIC. I see some callers and some texters. Stand by briefly. I want to throw this one out there as well. Of course, Jim, bringing it back to the state of Wisconsin.
Yes.
Some of the attorneys involved in the fraudulent elector scheme here in Wisconsin made their first appearance today in court. Talking about Kenneth Cheesebro. I know that's not how you say his name, but that's what we do because we're being disrespectful because he tried to throw out my vote. So, yeah. Jim Trupus and Mike Roman, a Trump campaign aide. Now, they're initially charged by Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul, right, with one count of fraud.
Exactly.
Yesterday, prior to coming into this court case today, he threw on an additional 10 charges of fraud. Apparently, let's see, what was the reason here? Oh, yeah. Charges related to a felony forgery and forgery meant to defraud the Republican electors who cast their ballot for Trump, even though Joe Biden won the state. So let me get this straight.
Yes.
The Republican.
Let's get this straight, Mr.
Are you
Attorney General.
Are you telling me
Right.
that these two attorneys and Mike Roman, the aide, were fraudulent, put a fraud upon the fraudulent Republican electors.
Right.
Is that what I'm understanding?
That's
here?
what you're.
Okay,
that's what I'm reading here in the
Right.
complaint, and again, it is fascinating and horrifying. Fascinating intellectually because again, you got it just right. Initially charged with fraud, basically upon all of us, right?
Yeah.
Forgery based upon stealing your vote, as you just said, Dom, right? And now we're saying that okay, there was a second kind of fraud, and that was visited upon the very people who signed these documents saying under penalty of perjury that they are electors, that Donald Trump won the election. We're willing to certify that to the Congress, to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of the Senate. We're sending that on. And as a result of that, the electors themselves, rather than potential defendants, as they were in every other state in the United States of America, they were actually the victims of crime. Here in Wisconsin, they were the victims of crime, according to our Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin.
Well, I don't know what you do. You either charge them, including
Right.
Andrew Hitt. We got a cut of Andrew Hitt from the 60 Minutes, right, from earlier this year. You either charge the 10 electors or you got to charge the attorneys because there was additional fraud one way or the other.
Right.
We got a little bit of sound. Let's play Andrew Hitt. This is a former head of the Republican Party in the state of Wisconsin when he got out in front of this story nationally and went on 60 Minutes. Play that, please, Jess.
You personally don't believe that legitimate votes by Wisconsin residents should be tossed out, and yet you are signing a document in support of a lawsuit which is alleging just that.
And if I didn't do that, and the court did throw out those votes, it would have been solely my fault that Trump wouldn't have won Wisconsin. Can you imagine the repercussions on myself, my family, if it was me,
If I didn't break the
Hitt,
law?
who prevented Donald Trump from winning Wisconsin?
You're saying you were scared?
Absolutely.
Scared of Trump supporters in your state?
It was not a safe time. If my lawyer is right, and the whole reason Trump loses Wisconsin is because of me, I would be scared to death.
Oh, he's scared. He's scared of his own voters.
How many things are wrong with that statement? Can we count them? Do we have enough time?
We have 3 minutes left in the segment.
Including that, again, that within hours before, you sat down and you signed this document. No conditional language in that says, oh, we're not going to use these unless a court finds. A couple hours before.
Pennsylvania did that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Many other states had that language.
Yeah.
A very different situation. You signed a document that said that I am an elector, that Donald Trump won. And again, did somebody compel you to be in that room in the Capitol where a couple hours earlier, the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin found, in fact, that Joe Biden had won the election? And what you're doing basically is you're saying, okay, again, putting aside the fear, which is an interesting concept, it doesn't absolve you of criminal conduct.
The claim of
fear, right?
Yes.
And now we're stating that, right? But you're also, this is the thing you and I have talked about before. If a lawyer comes to you, Dom, and says, I want you to sign a document that you know is false, and I want you to attest to this under penalty of perjury, don't worry. I will take care of it. I'm just going to take this document from you. You have no control over it, but I'm a lawyer. Trust me, and do that. Does anybody do that? I hope the answer is no.
Well, certainly, I think some people could do that, but you know who wouldn't do that? An election attorney like Andrew Hitt, who was the head of the Wisconsin Republican Party. He certainly should know better.
And these people are in the room in part because there was someone there, because they're in that category of people who are inclined to do it in the first place. So many things wrong with this. And I criticize our Attorney General once again for buying into that notion that somehow they're relying upon the representations of attorneys. We were misled. Now we've got the fear allegation here. It is ridiculous. I'd love to argue that in the closing argument in this trial, saying, members of the jury, common sense tells you this is not the thing to do.
James Santelle, former U.S. attorney. We're going to carry this conversation into the next hour as well. I hope you stick around with us, 855-752-4842. It's not, attorneys, Jim, can do wrong by their clients. I'm wondering,
absolutely.
Did they engage? Was there an engagement letter between these folks and these attorneys, Cheesebro and Trupus?
Trupus,
I don't know. But it seems to me if you're going to claim that, you should have some sort of documentation. Hey, these in fact, were our attorneys. They gave us bad advice that we followed, and therefore you should charge them with fraud, not us with fraud. Folks, this is the Dom Salvia Show. That is James Santelle. Just PS is on the board. You on the phones, 855-752-4842. Don't forget, text in Santa for your chance to win our statewide contest the last 90 seconds. Stick around.
Baby.
30 seconds.
Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you so much for hanging out, listening, being a part of this fine production. You can call us at 855-752-4842 or use that as a text line as well, 855-75-CIVIC. James Santelle, former U.S. Attorney, host of Amicus Law Review here on the Civic Media Radio Network, airing on Saturdays, 9 to 11 a.m., joins me today in our edition of Dom and Friends. We got Just PS on the board as well. We wrapped up the last hour talking about the fraudulent electors here in the state of Wisconsin and the attorneys who apparently, if you believe the Attorney General from Wisconsin, Judge Call, the attorneys who fraudulently presented these 10 electors or fraudulent electors with fraudulent documents.
That's right.
And now instead of the one charge that Kenneth Cheesebro, Mike Roman, and Jim Troupis were facing, now it's an additional 10 charges, presumably for each one of the fraudulent electors whom they frauded. For
the fraudulent conduct that they visited upon the fraudulent electors themselves. The electors are now victims in the state of Wisconsin.
It's really hard for me to believe that, Jim.
It is. And I would offer this. Let us suppose that next week the Electoral College is meeting. December 17th is the date across the country, right? They're doing it again, right? In anticipation, right? January 6th is when they're counting. We have not, believe it or not, we have not yet elected a president in the United States of America. Happens, I believe the date is December 17th, so it's going to happen again, right? And suppose next week that you and Jess and others here at Civic Media are summoned in by the Democrats.
Ooh.
And you get a room in the Wisconsin Capitol. And you get some attorneys, whatever they'd be Democratic attorneys, probably, whatever their affiliation is. And they come to you and say, Dom, we want to let you know that, in fact, we've got a plan that is premised upon the notion that Kamala Harris did, in fact, win the state of Wisconsin. Okay?
Harris won Wisconsin.
And we're going to present you with some documents to support that. And by the way, then we've got this other document that we want you to sign. It's got your name, your first name, your middle name, your last name. It's got a date. And you're going to sign this under penalty of perjury next week. And it establishes that you are an elector and you're certifying that Kamala Harris won the state of Wisconsin. And don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Even though it's under penalty of perjury, we're not going to use it right now, but we may in fact end up sending this to the United States Congress if we need to do that. We'd just like you to sign off on that. Would you do that?
No, man.
The answer is no, of course not, right?
Because of course Harris didn't win. Why would you do that? And would it make any difference if I believed in my heart Harris? I mean, does motivation or belief,
right?
Intent,
Motivation,
does that matter?
Right. It shouldn't, because at some point even the law contemplates that you've got some basic intelligence and some. I'll use the expression again, my friend, critical thinking, and pull up whether it is Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or whatever it is. At some point you have to acknowledge that indeed there is a winner, and if nothing more, you can go online in the Wisconsin Election Commission, pull up what are just the raw numbers without the commentary here, and see that all. And so the fact that will not happen next week is also indicative of the fraud that was perpetrated not on these electors, but attempted to perpetrate on the people of the state of Wisconsin. All the electors, like they were in other states, should have been charged, along with the architects, which are the three who have now been charged with these additional counts. Justice not done here. Justice not done. And also it happens 4 years after the events. 4 years after the events. Very untimely. Certainly, is there new information that we just got in the past several months? What is that?
Well, and part of my question, Jim, is what was the relationship between, I don't think the Trump aide, Mike Roman, I don't know if he's an attorney, I don't believe so, but certainly Troupis and Andrew Hitt, I'm sorry, Troupis and Kent Cheesebro.
Right.
Pardon me. if they engaged, if they had a retainer agreement with these 10 folks, and they, hey, I am your attorney, would there be an advice of counsel defense for those 10 folks in that circumstance?
Sure. And first of all, you'd anticipate maybe Andrew Hitt, when he's doing these interviews, would say, hey, here's my relationship with this attorney. I suspect there is not, but I don't know for sure. Presumably our attorney general does. But here's the other issue, which is the bigger one. If I'm
I'm sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
Do you need an engagement letter or retainer to take an advice of counsel defense?
You typically you would have to establish it. Yes, indeed, there is that relationship you've got.
And is that established by a cashing of checks?
It could be. It could be all sorts of things. It could be an agreement that you have just about representation. I do this all the time in a pro bono capacity, and you've got that attorney-client relationship. The advice of counsel defense is active. It's a real thing. Yeah. It's not a fraudulent concept. But basically, it's the kind of things that are not in the public domain. If, for example, I'm advising you on a tax matter, the 1956, the 1972 tax code, you want to incorporate, Dom, and you've got all sorts of specific issues about how that's done in the state of Wisconsin or Delaware, all kinds of in-the-weeds kinds of things that are not a part of the public general information. And your attorney says, you can do this because I've looked at this, and it turns out the attorney is wrong about that. That's when an advice of counsel's, because you don't have any intent and you legitimately relied in an area where you do not have the expertise, would not be expected to. If, on the other hand, I tell you that next Tuesday afternoon between 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all of the laws prohibiting bank robbery are no longer in effect, federal and state laws, and I say, don't worry, I'm a lawyer. Purge, I know
baby.
these things. I'm a former prosecutor. I can tell you with absolute certainty. So just rely on what I'm saying to you and under those circumstances, what I've just said to you is patently absurd, right? And you would recognize that as being just that. That's when the court can break into that veil, if you will, around the advice of counsel defense and say, no. That's an absurd proposition. You can't rely upon, even it's not even advice of counsel, that kind of defense that basically suggests that you are living in a world that does not exist.
So then why give these 10 electors a pass? It seems absurd that this would be the process to go through, especially knowing that the Wisconsin Supreme Court had ruled, especially knowing that the court cases have failed, right? Why wouldn't it seem absurd to go down that road?
And what you expect of people who are being asked to sign a document under a penalty of perjury with their name on it would say, you know what, let me just do a little bit of due diligence work to see, hey, what did the Supreme Court just do earlier today? What can I just pull this up on my phone and make a determination about whether or not the Wisconsin Election Commission, what they have said? Let me do a little bit of survey here. And if it turns out that really it is true, or at least there's a fighting chance here that Donald Trump still win, maybe then we can talk more. It also relies upon common sense to do just some due diligence here. It's an absurd proposition. These people are not victims.
I'm going to do the due diligence on your example of that all laws pertaining to bank robberies between 12 and 3 p.m. Are set aside. Is that Central or Eastern time?
It depends upon what your attorney has told you, right?
Exactly. 855-752-4842. To conclude, at least on this topic, and callers will get to you momentarily, each of the 11 charges against the men, because it started with one and now there's 11, each of them carries a maximum penalty of 6 years in prison in addition to a $10,000 fine. Are these people looking at 66 years in prison, Jim?
Right, and that's the other piece of this. I think there are people, and legitimately, are saying yes. Yeah, and
throw the book at him, man. It's my vote, Jim.
Absolutely.
My vote.
I get that completely.
Did I tell you about my vote?
Yep, and my attorney general is going after these people who attempted to compromise my vote, so almost overthrew the. I get that completely. A legitimate reason for being supportive of additional charges. Law enforcement folks, prosecutors do that all the time. The reality is that adding these charges when it comes to a conviction for the 1 count or the 12 counts is not going to result in any greater prison term, especially since, as we've talked before, a sentencing judge can even take into account conduct for which you've been acquitted, not charged, right? So I look at all this and I think, why are you doing this 4 years later? What is the impact of this? And is it meant just for the public consumption that says, yes, indeed, now it's not just 1 count. We've got them for 10 and 11 counts. We are really now kicking them in the shin. It sounds good. It sounds very visceral and superficial. Practically, I'm wondering what is really going on here.
Does it make the case for conviction above and beyond, beyond
a
a
reason, right.
reasonable doubt? Is it more difficult with the 11 charges instead of the one?
Sure, right. I mean, it on the other hand, it does give the jury a chance to pick and choose. You got maybe a greater chance of getting conviction. But the reality is, you've got to prove now two kind of different theories here, right? You've got to prove both fraud on you and me, and you've also got to fraud on these people who you're presumably going to call in as witnesses, who they're your victims. They're maybe now your witnesses, right?
Right.
And you're going to ask the jury to believe them under cross-examination of the sort that we have just undertaken.
Could they be
here.
compelled as quote-unquote victims? Could Andrew Hitt be called in these cases to testify against Cheesebro and these other cats?
Government can issue the subpoenas, and he can move to quash them before a trial judge here. It's in Dane County, right? You could do that. Most judges would say, gee, you're not a defendant. You're not being compelled to testify against yourself, maybe even asking the attorney general. They're not going to be charged. And you've got relevant evidence, relevant testimony to provide here. Probably would be, the subpoena would be enforced. And so, yeah, I think that they would, in fact, appear in this case. What an interesting trial
Wow,
that
makes
would,
it a little more
right,
interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But in the end, they shouldn't be witnesses. They should be on the defense side of things because they committed crimes. And that's not how they're being categorized now.
Not just against the state, but against you, me, and Jess by trying to steal our vote.
Absolutely.
And that's the worst thing.
Right?
855-752-4842. Let me tell you about me, Jim. Let's get to some of the callers. Mark, you're next. Welcome. What do you got for us?
Well, I'm a victim as well of these guys that they did this stuff. I mean, as I've said before, I mean, the 14th Amendment is pretty clear on who the electors are, and these people should darn well knew what it says because they've all been, floating around in the ether that is their class, especially Bobby Spindell, who sits on the election commission and should know darn well what the law is inside and out when it comes to this. They did this because they thought, well, just maybe we'll get away with this. And let's remember the whole plot behind this was they passed these things on to, Ron Johnson and his other co-conspirators, and they hoped to get this stuff through because January 6th was just part of the whole conspiracy, and that's what should be particularly galling to everybody is that there was a conspiracy, pure and simple, even though that it's all got dropped, as far as, for Donnie Trump and his co-conspirators there. But this will go down in the history books, and future generations will look upon this and say, what the hell happened here that we did not pin this guy's ears back?
Yeah, and thank you for the call, Mark. And you're right, absolutely right. History will be the judge ultimately, but I'd like to judge here right now. And when these folks try to steal our votes, I think we should always shout it from the rooftops, Jim. I mean, there should be no letting up on this. And another lesson to be learned for those who would seek to be in Trump's orbit, to get a little sniff of that nice white power, right?
Absolutely.
It's all about that power, man. Eventually, you're going to get cast aside, or you're going to get caught up. You're not the president. You're not the billionaire. You're just a coffee boy who's going to end up doing some time. 855-752-4842. Coming back with more of your calls. Plus, let's get to the pardon issue here with James Santelle, former U.S. attorney. Come back with us. the Dom Salvia Show, breaking the law with you here, 855-752-4842. James Santelle breaking the law with me. I swear he's breaking the law with me. Got Just PS on the board and you on the lines, 855-75-Civic. Len from Madison. Those are willing complicit. Those that are willingly complicit, thank you, Len, are not victims. Willingly complicit. They're not victims.
Right.
I agree with Len.
And that's what the jury instruction says. Talks about willfulness, intent, purpose. What were you doing when you were signing those documents? You almost
if you believe Andrew Hitt, he was saving his life,
right?
Because if he didn't sign it and Trump ended up being found to have won or whatever the case was, then his life would be in danger. Let's see, this was Andrew Hitt, who was the chairman of the Wisconsin Republican Party, saying that of his own party members.
Isn't that telling?
Jeez,
if it's true, isn't that
man.
telling? Right? Right?
Wow. We like pirates around here.
Who knew in the state of Wisconsin we've got those kinds of folks out there?
You gotta fear your own crew, man. Come on.
We thought we were gentle and kind
Wisconsin
in
nice?
Wisconsin. Right,
what happened to Wisconsin nice?
Wow, turns out we're attributive.
We got pardons to get to. We got the Hunter Biden pardon. We have Trump threatening or saying he won Man of the Year from Time Magazine, but they don't have a great track record. Let's just go that way. Talking about pardoning the January 6th rioters or whatever you want to call them. And of course, today the news is Joe Biden, the president, commutes.
Right, he did some pardons.
What's the term?
Exactly.
What's the term?
Both.
Proper term.
Supreme Court. The United States Constitution talks about both granting reprieves and pardons. Commutation, different from pardons. Pardons basically erase the conviction, wipes out a conviction, takes it off the official records. Historically, of course, it's still there. Wipes out the conviction. Anything goes along with that. A commutation leaves the guilty verdict or the guilty judgment in place. It's still a part of the public record, the official court record, but it typically reduces the time of any sentence. Maybe to time served, basically says go and be on with your life, but the underlying conviction remains. And Biden did a combination of both of those just earlier today. In two different categories. The commutations were basically for people, once again, who had been during the course of the pandemic, basically sent out of their prisons and told to serve the rest of their time at home. It did it.
Michael Cohen, the former fixer from Donald Trump, did that. But then he threw his ass back in jail.
Exactly. Life is very complicated, is it not, Dom? For all of the categories, there's always one, right? And so there's got this threat out there that again, a new party coming in would basically say, no, we want all those people who went home during the pandemic for purposes of ensuring that Bureau of Prisons are not these petri dishes of COVID and causing great harm to another population in America. Let's call them back in and send them back to prison for that period of time. So commutations basically don't undermine and don't erase the underlying convictions. Basically say time served. And so he ensures that those people will not be going back to prison.
What if there was outstanding fines, for example? You're on a payment plan because you can't afford the $100,000 fine. You owe $50,000 left for whatever. Would that be part of it as well?
It could be. It could very well be.
Depends,
yes.
Right,
exactly.
On the case.
All kinds of circumstances. Yeah. This is why, for example, you've got an Office of the Pardon Attorney, believe it or not, inside the Department of Justice that looks at all these things in a proper world and says, gee, does this person deserve a pardon, a commutation? How does this work? You've got people who are applying standards and practices.
Come on, man. I feel like Trump was going through the Office of Pardon approval process, man.
That was just his family.
Apparently not when Charles Kushner, the father-in-law of his...
I'm sorry, you mean Mr. Ambassador to France.
Yes. Right. The father of his son-in-law, convicted, again, according to what Chris Christie says, was one of the most heinous crimes he's ever seen when he was U.S. attorney.
He honeypotted his own brother-in-law and sent the sex tape to his sister, man. Right. What?
And believe it or not, that wasn't even the core of the conviction, right? That was kind of a collateral piece on all this.
Yes.
But France, here he comes. And unlike the Office of the Pardon Attorney, again, civil servants looking at the applications would have sent this one on. Maybe we sent it on to the White House.
I'm sorry.
applications, right?
What is that exactly?
You'd fill out a form, believe it or not,
a
Dom,
form.
right?
There's a form?
Right?
Oh,
Usually,
okay. Do you think that Jared's dad filled out a form, Jim?
I'm guessing probably not. I'm guessing probably. In fairness, when George Washington was president, he would write these out by his own hand, right? He didn't have typewriters, so he'd write them out. My guess is there's some written recording of that somewhere, but didn't probably go through those civil servants in the Department of Justice. Typically, their standard has been 5 years after the conclusion of your sentence, your judgment, and show us something about your life that commends you to the community. You've done something, you've been magnanimous, you have supported some social causes, you made yourself, your community, your family better. Show us why you are qualified to get clemency or a pardon. Show us that. We'll send that on to the White House then for the president to make the final determination of the Constitution, but go through us first. Unlikely that happened.
My son's sleeping with your daughter. 855-752-4842. Dick from Madison, you're up. Welcome. What do you got for us?
It'd all be real funny if it wasn't so pathetically sad.
Absolutely.
The best political cartoon I've seen, couple things, was Hunter Biden standing in the Oval Office with his dad, and Joe is saying, well, I can pardon you, or you can get a Confederate flag and attack the Capitol on January 20th, and Trump will pardon you.
All right.
And that's the president-elect's promise. Right? He has said that he's going to do that and probably will grant pardons to all those people, which means that, again, maybe even beyond those who have been charged already. You can do this, by the way, here's your civics point for the afternoon. You can extend pardons to people who have not yet been convicted. That's the Richard Nixon situation, right? You can describe it as Hunter Biden's pardon was for a period of time. For those people who are in the process right now, frankly, if I had a defense attorney and I was defending somebody right now in the D.C. District Court who has been charged but not convicted, I would delay that and delay that and delay that until January 20th, right? Somehow, because then you know that you'll almost certainly get a commutation of pardon. Even after the judgment, even if you're sitting in prison right now, even if you have served your time, paid your fine, you can still get a pardon.
Interesting. So Joe Biden apparently is considering preemptive pardons for, J6 committee members, for Fauci and others. We're going to talk about that as well. Come back with us. 855-752-4842. It's a crime if you don't, and you won't get pardoned.
15 seconds.
Welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. James Santelle, former U.S. Attorney, host of Amicus, a law review, broadcasting here on the Civic Media Radio Network on Saturdays from 9 to 11 a.m. Joining me in studio, Jess P.S. is on the board. And folks, don't kid yourself. Jess is really in charge. 855-752-4842. We're talking about commutations. Am I saying that right? Commutations.
Yep, absolutely.
We're talking about pardons and preemptive pardons.
Preemptive pardons.
Okay,
right?
so the commutations, Jim, apparently that Joe Biden did today, President Biden, were for generally non-violent drug offenders.
Right. The pardons
So
themselves.
can I get me one of those?
Right,
Jim?
exactly. Right.
Have you been charged?
Well, and once again, this is the reason why Jess is your producer, because she hits it right on the head.
Do I have to be charged and convicted? Because isn't that the point of our next topic?
Absolutely. So the Supreme Court has said, Jess knows this, I suspect you know this, and all your listeners know it too. Supreme Court has basically said that a pardon is premised upon an acceptance of responsibility. It's an acknowledgement of guilt, G-U-I-L-T, right? And so here's a little anecdote from history. Gerald Ford, after he pardoned Richard Nixon, criticized a lot as he goes around the country, both while he's campaigning for the presidency and afterwards. He keeps a card in his pocket, reliably, and it's got a reference to this case called Burdick, in which the Supreme Court says that. And when some people come up to him and say, you let Richard Nixon off for all of his crimes, he says, no, I didn't, because when Richard Nixon accepted that pardon, I granted that to him, he accepted. By doing that, he is acknowledging he committed crimes. And that's the point about all these. Right?
So what? A dump thief flounder. I mean,
Right,
so what?
right,
You acknowledge you committed crimes, but you don't pay any price for it.
That's right. And the fact that you can do it at any time. You can do it as Joe Biden just did for a period of time. Richard Nixon also for a period of time. You can do before, during, after conviction, anytime. The Constitution is very broad on that. But here's the point. That again, this is lost on everyone but your listeners and you and Jess and other people in Civic Media here. There is that fundamental notion, and this is the reason why he's not calling. He doesn't respond to my letters. But if the president happens to be listening to this fine broadcast, don't do this, Mr. President. Don't do preemptive pardons for a couple of reasons. One is, and I wonder out loud if people like Jack Smith would even accept such a thing. He knows this. I'm accepting a pardon. For what? For criminal conduct? Tell me what it is that I did as special counsel that is a crime. Tell me what it is.
Well, you went after the king. That's the crime.
Right. And find the criminal code reference in the federal criminal code that makes investigative work based upon probable cause returned by a grand jury that makes that a crime, Mr. President or Mr. Attorney General. The same with the chair of the January 6th committee. Same with Adam Schiff, who's also out there on the list. Anthony Fauci. What did Anthony Fauci do? You may disagree with him on medical things, although you shouldn't. He's a brilliant person. He got it just right. What crime did Anthony Fauci commit for which he needs to be pardoned? And again, I think it's a bad idea, not only legally, but it also sends the message. And this is the big one. You do preemptive pardons. They don't have to be accepted, by the way. You can extend them, you can accept them or reject them. But let's suppose there are a great number of people among that list. Even some Republicans are on the list too, obviously. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, all those folks, right? If you send the message, if they do in fact say, yes, I'm accepting the pardon extended to me by President Joe Biden, you're basically giving that lead, that emphasis.
Ammo. You're giving them ammo.
Right, to the president and other people. Say, see, the prior administration was full of criminals. And they're now acknowledging it by virtue of accepting these pardons. They're acknowledging that they committed crimes in that investigative work, both in the grand jury and the trial efforts, all those motions they filed in Florida and in the District of Columbia. They're acknowledging that when they pursued that January 6th committee for all those times we saw them, that they were engaging in criminal conduct. See, this is what I'm talking. I'm vindicated by history. Don't do this, Mr. President. And instead, here's what we do. If, in fact, he does turn around, I think there's some strong safeguards against charging people, because you still have to get through a grand jury to charge Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. It's a big hurdle. You can still open the investigation. This is why Bondi and Patel are such a danger. You can open the investigation. Sometimes the investigation can be the punishment itself, right? That can happen. But still, I would much rather have us invest in lawyers for these people. Let's get some civic groups out there. Let's get some public interest groups to give them lawyers to defend against these spurious charges. Let's get them dismissed. And that will live on for history as a rebuke to this effort to go after your political rivals. But don't do this now. Don't do preemptive pardons.
I struggle with this because, of course, you're absolutely right. And the response from Cheney and Kinzinger and others have basically been bring it. But not everyone has the resources, and I don't know that you want to go after Dick Cheney's daughter. You know what I mean?
Right.
But part of me is also like, well, yeah, so what? So what? I mean, Trump pardoned all sorts of folks. I mean, Trump pardoned Flynn, and Trump pardoned Roger Stone, and
Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, right?
His advisors, his campaign manager. Now, granted, those, and I guess this would be my distinction. Those are not elected politicians, right? Those, and I think there is a difference there, and maybe because of that difference, I'd be more leaning towards your side. But I have a big, F you kind of attitude on this as it comes to what is right and proper and moral, quote unquote. Because look at what the Trump people getting away with and doing, and they don't seem to give a damn. The MAGAs don't, whether or not Roger Stone was pardoned, or whether or not Flynn was pardoned, or whether or not Bannon was pardoned. They don't care. They're all. It's all just a big witch hunt, according to them. But of course, now on the other side, the hypocrisy would be, well, you're doing that. Look, we've been right all the time. So, I mean, yes, you're right, but come on, man. We have to live at different standards now?
And the other piece of it is you go after some staffer whose name we do not even know right now. Who's on, again, it was Jack Smith was out there. He was the voice piece. He was the face of this. He had lots of attorneys. Some of them have appeared in court. We know their names. And those people, I can speak to this as somebody who worked for the government for 30 years, you do not become wealthy. I am not a wealthy person. I'll state it on the radio here right now. I'm still not a wealthy person.
Oh, man, you're not doing it right, Jim.
Exactly. Something is wrong with my career choices, right, Dom? But you do not become wealthy working for the government. You've got some other interests in your life, and these people have plainly done. They've got career officials inside the Department of Justice. It is the investigation can be the punishment. You open an investigation, you require them to produce documents, you pursue, again, it shouldn't happen.
If they go after DOJ, FBI type folks, right? And they're still employed, does the FBI defend them?
Not necessarily. Again, it has to do with whether what they're alleged to be done is an official act or something in their private capacity. Of course, they're official acts, right? And so it should be.
I've heard this story before.
You've seen this, right? Routinely, when I was a civil division chief, you would grant people, you'd say, no, you're being sued because of something you've done in your official capacity, and yes, we will represent you. So that can often happen. But the allegations, again, can be in the nature of, well, you're so far beyond your official acts. You've heard this before, that you're acting in your personal capacity. Therefore, you pay for this privately. And even beyond just the economic piece, which is huge.
Right.
I get it. That can be devastating to people.
Trump has said he paid like $500,000 just for the civil case to defend against.
And good. Right.
Right. And part of that civil case here in the state of Wisconsin, Jim, they had to admit that they were, in fact, the 10 electors admitted that they were trying to overturn the election.
Exactly, right? So you make those admissions there. Economically, it's huge. Yeah. Here's the other piece of it. Just psychologically, you're under investigation for what, 2, 3, 4 years? And you know that, again, I do not believe that legitimate grand juries in eastern Wisconsin, western Wisconsin, the other 90 districts out there, 26 people would look at these kinds of plainly trumped up political charges and say, yes, I believe that there is probable cause to believe that crimes have been committed. I think that's your big stopgap here. But the investigation, the open investigation, where you're subject to interviews, if you and your lawyer choose to submit to those, which you may want to do, you're required to produce, bank bank records of yours, telephone tolls, things you've got to explain, your emails.
But those kinds of requests have to, don't they need some probable cause? You can't just go on a fishing expedition and say, hey, show me your taxes for the last 20 years because you didn't dot an I or cross a T on your F1 form.
And it goes to the fundamental issue that what's wrong with all of this. The answer is yes, absolutely. You can't open a file unless you've got some reason to believe that you or I actually committed. You don't have to have probable cause. You don't have to have anything, just even some sense that there's something out there that you have done. It can be very low level. You don't have to have a high level standard here to open the investigation. And as a result of that, you can do it if you've got a Pam Bondi or someone else telling your National Security Division, your Criminal Division, other sections. You've got the FBI saying, you know what, let's just play around with this. There are also stopgaps inside the federal judiciary. To get some of that, I have to go to a court to produce these kinds of things. I've got to show to the IRS. I've got to need to show. So there are safeguards along the way. Does it prevent the file from being opened inside a truly corrupted Department of Justice? If you're taking assignments exclusively from the White House and the West Wing, and you are saying, Mr. President, I am loyal to you, I will open up that investigation of Dom Salvia. I don't know how far it's going to go, but I will do it, and I will require him to get counsel, and I will change his life for the next several years. That you can do.
Counsel. I'm pro se, Jim. 855-752-4842, 855-75 Civic. Carol's been patient on the lines. I want to talk about pocket pardons in just a moment. Carol, welcome. You're on with Dom and Jim and Jess. What do you got?
Hi. Since we were on the subject of pardons, do you think Leonard Peltier will ever get a pardon or a compassionate release, or is he in there till he passes?
That's how much time do we have, right? Yeah,
right.
It's a tough question, and again, it's one of those things where I suspect that reasonable people can, if not disagree, at least have different views on all of that. I mean, obviously there are convicted crimes there, and some of them are very dramatic. On the other hand, an awful lot of argument that he has served his time and should now be subject to maybe even a commutation, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's the situation. It's a perfect example of where the Office of the Pardon Attorney, people who look at these things all the time, should weigh those countervailing considerations and make a thoughtful, non-biased recommendation. Say, you know what, the time has come to do this, or you know what, the time has not yet come. This is our recommendation, Mr. President. Here are all the facts. You make the decision. That's what our Constitution contemplates.
Thank you for the call, Carol. Pocket pardons.
Yes.
Is it possible for the current president, for Joe Biden, to say, hey, here's a pardon for if and when you ever, whatever. It's basically a get out of jail free card. Is that a thing?
The answer is it's a thing out there, I think, in pardon lore, if you will. Kind of like
has that ever been done?
Right.
That we're aware of.
Not that I know of. Again, that's the point, right? If you want to use it, at some point, it's got to be inside government records somewhere, right? If you happen to upon Joe Biden in the next 38 days, and you have not committed
on the back
crimes,
of the napkin,
Dom, right?
From the Roman coin, it says,
Exactly,
Dom,
right?
you got a free pass, brother.
Right, precisely. Frankly, it is to your advantage not to keep that in your pocket. Why? Because if you need to use it at some point, then you've got to establish not only is this Joe Biden's signature on this napkin from Roman coin, but I got it on January 5th, and I was there. You've got to have Jess along with you. It says it would testify. You have to establish its legitimacy. If it goes through the regular process, if it comes from the pardon attorney, if it goes to the White House, all these pardons, these 1,500 from today, there's record on all of them. So for time immemorial, even the people who got commutated sentences.
Okay, so I go through the process. I hit, the Office of whatever.
Right.
I get to check the box. I got it notarized. Just sees it. I take it. I put it in a safe. It's good forever. Right. And I hang on to it until if and when. And I would, you don't pull it out until the jury comes back. Right? Hey, convicted. Right. Boom. Here's my pardon.
Right. Your lawyer would probably tell you, let's get it out long before that.
Are you kidding me? They're going to want their billing hours, Jim. This is why you're doing it wrong, man. I'm telling you.
Right? Exactly. So don't hire me, because I would recommend we produce that long in advance.
Gosh, you're so moral.
Of a jury. I want you to be out from under this as soon as possible. It then goes back to this issue. If you've got a Department of Justice that says, where has this been for 20 years? And how do I know that, again, it's legitimate? Then you've got a burden of proof. And you do have to call on Jess, who will then be the President of the United States of America. And maybe she's even more credible than she is today to testify about it. You've got to establish all those things for the legitimacy of a future presidency, a future administration. Get it on the record now. It's much wiser to do it that way.
Folks, it's all about the billion hours. 855-752-4842. Come back with us. One final segment with our friend James Santelle.
I'm gonna make it bend and break. They sent you to me without way. Say a prayer, but let the good times roll. In case God doesn't show. Let the good times roll. And I want these words to make things right, but it's the wrongs that make the words come to life. Who does he think he
Welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show. 855-752-4842. 855-75 Civic. James Santelle, former U.S. attorney, host of Amicus, a law review, broadcasting here on the Civic Media Radio Network on Saturdays, 9 to 11 a.m. Getting a little early taste with me here today. Our last segment, Jim, thank you for doing so. Just PS on the board. We got some very active posters on here. Our buddy Tom from L.A. Jim, you're speaking too much like an attorney. Attorneys who screwed up, Trump got away. Trump was a 34 convicted felon. And Jim wants to talk about justice. Really? Question mark. Now, Tom said he would take it. He says basically these aren't normal times. And, you know, I'm going to paraphrase because Tom's over here writing a novel. You could just call him, man. But basically is that, you know, Trump's going to do everything he can. Why
Absolutely.
shouldn't we, Biden, Dems, whoever might be in the crosshairs, do whatever they need to do to fight back?
I get that completely. And again, the extension of pardons would not be unconstitutional. If Joe Biden wants to go ahead and pardon preemptively all sorts of people, he can do it. Again, the other piece of this from the Supreme Court is it's not subject to review or by overturning. That's been the
and they have to accept it.
They do not have to accept it.
They don't
okay?
have.
Do
but
not.
Can they hang on to it then? That's I guess my point.
You have to do something with it again for the reasons we talked about before.
But how do you do a preemptive pardon on a crime that has not yet been charged for something? A preemptive pardon for something you didn't do on a trumped up charge that has not yet been submitted. What are you pardoning them for?
That's precisely my point. And what is the message that that's sending to the American population?
They're all a bunch of crooks.
That the Democrats have, for the past 4 years, and previously in that prior Obama administration, if we reach back then, and now we've got confirmation from them that they're criminals.
Yeah.
And I think that is the high ground to say no to that. And to respond to the other issue, of course, and I've been very critical also of this Attorney General, the one in Washington, D.C., for preemptively, I believe, dismissing those federal cases, both in D.C. and South Florida. We talked about this before. Big mistake. Keep those cases pending. Get orders from Tanya Chutkan and from the 11th Circuit disposing of those cases. I think that the Democrats dropped the ball on that, and they were not as aggressive as they should be, even though those trials were never going to happen. Another missed opportunity.
Jim read an interesting article recently about perhaps Joe Biden using monumental pardon power. Any folks that would be here undocumented, illegally, quote unquote, to pardon them. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that concept?
You know, it again, typically in recent times, and you can go online and find all the pardons, not only for this president, there were about 26 of them until the time of under Biden. Now we've got an additional 1,500 as of today. You can find all of them, almost all of them, with the exception of these larger groups, are name specific. And usually that's, again, for the reasons I described before, being the lawyer, that you want it to be very specific. But remember, not by our own personal recollection, Andrew Johnson pardoned a full pardon and an amnesty to all former Confederates on Christmas Day in 1868. That's a very large bunch, right? Those are legitimate. Some of us may recall, again, maybe very, very young, but Jimmy Carter, first day in office. That's why you can do this. You can take the oath of office, walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and move into the White House. First day in office, 200,000 draft resistors to the Vietnam War. Now, probably we've got the names of many of those violations of the Selective Service Act. Those were crimes. Bringing them back into America. You can do what are variously called monumental pardons. You can do broad pardons. And again, they're not subject to review, to attack, that sort of thing. If you're wise and you are in that group, again, what you would do is contact the office of the pardon attorney and say, hey, I just want to make sure that you know I'm among that group. And for that reason, when it comes to employment and voting and all the other civil liberties that go along with this, I'm in that group. It makes sense for you to get an attorney and have that, or do it on your own and be identified in that group. But you could do it.
Well, I mean, like you could be more specific, DACA
right, absolutely.
Folks. I mean,
and we know the size of that population, and because many of them have made applications, right? That's the entire concept, right? We know who they are, and you can actually publish those names as well. You could do that as well. Don't be surprised at all. Joe Biden isn't done yet. It is December 12th here. We've got 38 more days. He's going to do more of this before the end of the year and into early January, I believe. And it could be some of these larger pardons. I hope he does. Again, for people who have committed crimes throughout, the whole idea behind this is justice, and it's mercy is what the Supreme Court talks about. It's having somebody inside government look at this and say, you know what, it's right to do it. You have served your time. You've admitted to the underlying criminal offense conduct. You've done something good in the community for yourself, for other people. It is right and just that I, not as the monarch, although the Supreme Court want you to think that that's what we have now, and maybe we do have now a regent who is the president. As the chief executive, I am going to exercise my forgiveness, my mercy, and do this wonderful thing for people who deserve it. Now, is that description true of all the people we've mentioned this afternoon? No, but that's the concept. That's the idea behind all this, and that's what should animate. I would argue that that's what animates Joe Biden right now to the 26 up to his own son, 1,500 today, and more coming up. This is a man who's going to do this, I believe, based upon principled review and consideration.
1,500 commutations today, the largest one day ever issued. Right. And maybe we'll be 15 million undocumented migrants going forward. We shall see. Thank you, James Santelle, for hanging out, man. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Good to be with you. And happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, thank you to you as well. Thank you, Jess PS on the board. Thank you to our fair audience. Thank you for all of you folks playing our contest. It continues on tomorrow. And stick around. Nightlight with our pal Pete Schwaba is coming up next. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful evening.
Even though they weren't so great, he tastes like you, sweeter.